Idam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada Yapurnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhutaguhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. From the verse 17, the teacher has taken away topical issue Aham Brahmasmiti Mahavakyat Bhutam Sada Vidya Anusandadhyat. How one should contemplate upon oneself as Aham Brahmasmi. Sakshitvena Urvaritam Sakshabhadaya. Sakshabhadaya, by negating, recognizing as non-self what is Sakshyam or Drishyam. Urvaritam, what remains is the Sakshi, and that I am, that is Brahman. So how should one contemplate upon one's own self? In between this topic was taken up. The process started by the Atma Anatma Viveka, by discarding, recognizing the body, sense organs, mind, etc., one after them as non-self. And then one by one other views were also taken up, including the ultimately Vijnanavadi Bauddha. So Vijnanavadi Bauddha would contemplate on self as the momentary conscious. That's not the way to contemplate upon the self. Contemplate upon yourself as Brahman, as whole, complete, eternal. Then same thought process was continued as to how the three states are not Atma and therefore the Vishwa, Tejas, Prajna is not the Atma. And the reason why Atma is thought to be Karta, because when you say that Tyajed Vilapayed should give up these three states, that does it mean that Atma is Kartrutva? No. Kartrutvam, the doership or activity is Sakriyatvam, potentially lies in this combination of the body, mind, intellect, sense organs, sense objects. When these entities come in contact with each other by Nyonyadhyasa, by the mutual superimposition, then action automatically arises without anybody to do anything. That's the nature of Prakriti to do things. It is true that Prakriti has to combine with one element and the elements of Prakriti with other elements in order for the karma to happen. Bhranti syat Now that creates a bhranti that Atma is karta. Kartrutvam is not centered on the Atma, centered upon this Anatma from the body, Atma, I mean Buddhi, Manaha, sense organs, sense objects. And how the superimposition takes place, how when we do not inquire into something, we take for granted. Nimilon milane sthane vayavye tena chakshusha. The eyelid opens and closes, and we take it for granted that it is I that does it. It is no. Prakasha Swarupam. So Chakshurindriyam is Prakasha Swarupa, nature of Prakasha or knowledge or light. Light or knowledge cannot be the locus of karma, and that why means prana that is doing it, and still superimposed that eyes are doing that. Buddha, similarly also, manasevam buddha, chanchalam manaha, the mind is restless. So, sthira buddhi, the buddhi is steady. The steadiness, restlessness do not belong to buddhi or mind because again they are nature of knowledge or light, illuminating things. That also belongs to vayu or prana. Manobuddhi asadhana dharma kathana purvakam prasangam upadam upasamharati. This prasangikam of how to contemplate upon the self as akarta, abhokta, even as the essence of the sakshi, as very Brahman. Sankalpadhyavasayautu manobuddhyo risakramat netaretar dhanatvam sarmachatmani kalpitam. Similarly, sankalpa dharmakam manah. Sankalpa, to resolve, to think about something belongs to the mind. Adhyavasaya dharmika buddhi. Adhyavasaya, to conclude about something, judge something is the nature of buddhi. The sankaryam, meaning mind does its own work and buddhi does its own work, and there is no mix-up between the two. This is what it is. Then, kutasthasya atmanasvatak kartrutva sambhavat. Atma, that is kutastha, cannot have kartrutva. Nor anatma, that is unconscious, can have kartrutva. And therefore, kartrutva, doership, cannot be explained other than superimposition. Therefore, the verse 21 concluded saying that sarvam cha atmani kalpitam. So, sarvam sahetukam samsaramandanam atmani kalpitam na paramahatadaha. So the bondage along with its cause of ignorance is all superimposed on Atma, thought to belong to Atma, does not belong to Atma. Recognize this by Viveka. Iti sadaiva Atmadvyam Brahma iti siddham ityartha. The siddham established with this reasoning that Atma is Brahman, that is non-dual. Now continuing the next verse, verse 22, the introduction. So again, prasangigam upapaditam. This topic that was taken up and discussed with reasoning to arrive at the conclusion that all of this is only superimposed on the Atma, that art self is ever free. How was it done? Dehendriya manobuddhi shunyatmatvad nirakaranena. There is not the Atma, it's just 5 elements. Indriya and Atma, there are also 5 elements in the karana. Manha, buddhi, all of these are also non-Atma. That karana also and buddhi also again is not shunya. So buddhi is not momentary, shunya atma, the Atma cannot be shunya. these views are all dismissed. Nirakarana tad vilakshana vivechitah. By demonstrating how each one of these anatma, tad vilakshana atma is vilakshana, distinct from the body, sense organs, mind, intellect, momentariness, shunya. Atma vivechitah. The Atma has been distinguished from all of these which are anatma or which are false imaginations. Idanim dehadi vilakshanopi atma. So continuing the trend of taking up the views of other people about Atma and showing how those cannot stand the scrutiny of reasoning. So Vedanta employs reasoning here to dismiss the further views about Atma. Idanim dehadi vilakshanopi atma. So Atma is different from Deha, Indriyani, Manaha, Buddhi. Accepted. Deha samaparimana iti Jaina matena. So Jainas also accept Atma as different from the body, mind, sense organs. It's a distinct entity. It's a conscious entity of whom the nature is consciousness. Body, this is the dwelling place of the Atma. And they have their own arguments with the Charvakas who say that there is no separate Atma and that the body itself is consciousness and so forth. No, the conscious being is different from the body. Except that they say that consciousness is of the shape of the body. It also has the property of extension, meaning body extends and the conscious also extends, body contracts and the conscious also contracts. On one hand, they say that Atma is consciousness. On the other hand, they say that consciousness is subject to expansion and contraction. So how did this idea of consciousness being limited, how did that arise? What makes them think that consciousness is limited to body? That it is not all pervasive. You see, even though the Vaisheshikas, Naiyayikas also or Sankhya's accept Atma as many, still for them Atma consciousness is Vibhu. It's all pervasive. Nobody accepts that consciousness is confined to the body. So how can there be multiple vibhus? Maybe, difficult to explain. All of them accept Atma as consciousness and vibhu, all pervasive consciousness. So nobody accepted consciousness as confined to something. And subject to expansion, contraction, just doesn't go with consciousness. So how did the idea of consciousness being limited to this body, mind, sense complex, so how that also can be an adhyas superimposition? That they sincerely believe that Atma is consciousness confined to the body. Is there a reason how someone can arrive at this conclusion? There is a reason. So, deha samaparimana iti Jaina matena atmana parichindatva shankayam. So, even though earlier arguments proved that Atma is different from the body, but still the Atma that is different from body can be of the size of the body only. They have parimana, samaparimana. It doesn't have its own parimana or measure, the body becomes a measure. Then there are other questions which are not relevant here anyway. Parichinda Sankayam na tasya brahmatma upapadyate. If consciousness, according to what the Jains say, is parichinnam or limited, then it can't be Brahman, the limitless. And second thing we said in the verse 21, last sarvam chatmani kalpitam. All samsara is kalpitam, is projected upon Atma. It is na yujyate. You cannot say all of this is kalpitam, projected upon the Atma. Who does it? Question is, who projects this upon Atma? Kalpaka abhava. So this is not kalpitam. That Atma is thus many and limited is not kalpitam, it is what is, because there is no kalpaka. Kalpaka means one imagines, one who imagines. The imagination of projection can be there provided there is someone to project. Who is there to project here? This limitation of Atma. How do you say this projection? Without establishing the one who projects. It is Ashanka. With this Ashanka, the next verse is stated. Sthanavacheda drishti syat indriyanam tadatmatam karadhistam hi pashyanyah dehamatra iveksyate. Sthan avacheda drushti indriyanam syat. Indriyanam, even though sense organs also, the presiding deities of sense organs, such as sun or the fire, they are all pervasive. Even there also the drishti is not limited. But sthana avacheda drushti syat indriyanam. Because each indriya or sense organ is located in its location, confined to its location. Like the eyes are confined to a location, and so each sense organ. Therefore, there is this notion that sense organs are limited. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. So these things are thought to be limited because, not because that may be limited, but because the respective sense organ is located in a particular force center. So says the Tika, Indriyanam Dehat Bahirvritya Bhavat Dehavaya Golaka Sthana Avachedena Drushti Upalambhasyat. Indriyanam Dehat Bahirvritya Bhavat. That yes, eyes can see as long as they are within the body, and therefore they don't have any reach outside the body. They are Bahirvritya Bhavat. The vritti, their activity or location outside the body is not there. So Deha Avayava Golaka Sthana. The Golaka, the locus of the eyes is Deha Avayava, either is an Avayava or is a limb or a part of the body, organ of the body. So eyes are limited to the organ of the body which is part of the gross body. So on account of identification of the gross body, the organs of perception, organs of action are limited because there is identification with this given locus in the body. Sthana avachedena drushti upalambhasyat. So drushti or upalamba or perception is sthana avachedena. It is avacheda or limitation of sthana or the location, because the faculty of seeing eyes are located in a locus which is part of the gross body. So sense organs being identified with the gross body create the notion of limitedness. So, upalambha, the perception is limited. So, drishti syat, tika bhavati ityarthasya bhavati. Syat means bhavati. Means that this drishti is limited because of its location in the gross body. Tasacha tvagadinam indriyanam yathayogam deha parimanatvat. And so a respective sense organ is limited depending upon where the location is, except in case of the organ of touch, it is all over the body, but still confined to the body, not outside the body. So sense organs limited by the body and tadatmatam gata dhihi. The buddhi and the mind have now identification of the sense organ, therefore they are limited that way. Sendriya deha tadatmam prapta buddhi syat. Therefore the buddhi tadatmatam becomes one or identified with the sense organs and through the body through the sense organs. Sendriya deha tadatmam. Tadatmam, identification with the deha, sendriya, along with the body. So body possessing sense organs, with that the buddhi has tadatmam, identification. Gatadhi tam pashyan, tam buddhim pashyan, avabhasayan, gnyah atma, Svata parichya deha matreva deha parimana vachchaiva ikshate. Atma tam buddhim pashyan avhasayan. Atma eliminating that buddhi, which is identified as the sense organs, which in turn are limited by the gross body, and therefore deha matreva deha parimana avachinna eva ikshate. So Atma, the consciousness that eliminates buddhi, also appears limited on account of what is illumined. So Atma is also thought to be confined to the body. How the idea of confinement arises? First, because body is confined, sense organs are confined to the body. The buddhi identified as sense organs also are of the size of the body. And Atma illumines this buddhi also is thought to be, because that's all it illumines. Atma also is thought to be of the same parimana, same measure as the buddhi, and therefore confined to the body. So Vedanta then explains how the idea of confinement to the body arises. This is the reason. Reason is that Atma immediately illumines the buddhi, and buddhi is limited to the sense organs, which is limited to the body. Therefore, deha matreva deha parimana avachinna eva ikshade jnayate bhrantya pratibhasate. Therefore, bhrantya, on account of this delusion, aviveka, Atma appears as though it is confined to the body. If you take this idea a little further, anyatha madhyama parimanasya ghataadivat sayavat, this is called madhyama parimana. So you take Atma as anuparimana, just take madhyama parimana, others take Atma as vibhu or all pervasive. When Atma is thought to be madhyama parimana of the size of the body, then there are other problems there. Anyatha madhyama parimanasya, so bhrantya, if this is not bhranti, Vedanta says that Atma is madhyama parimana of the size of the body, the bhranti is not a reality of Atma. If that was reality, anyatha, meaning that if madhyama parimanatvam, Atma being of the size of the body was real, ghataadivat savayatvena anityatvapatte. anything that is limited in form, in name, is a creation, and therefore also an aggregate or assembly of various components. Savayatva, like a ghata, which is an aggregate of many parts or components. Anityatvapatte, anything that is created and assembled is going to dismantle and therefore ultimately perish. So anything that is madhyama parimanam cannot be nitya. It has to be karya, sanghata, therefore anitya. Paralaukika sadhana pravati asambhava prasanga. If you know that Atma is going to die and perish, where is paraloka? The question of the birth does not arise if Atma is not continuous. If Atma is mortal, then it cannot be reborn, there cannot be another loka also. So nobody can do something here to gain a place in Swarga because the Atma is going to die. It is imperishable. The Mimamsakas accept Atma to be deathless. The body dies, Atma's existence continues, even the Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva is there. But Atma is Nitya, and therefore the one who performs karma here will enjoy the results there. But by this measure, Charvakas all take Atma as Anitya. There is no paraloka for them. Whereas Jains talk of paraloka, they talk of a Siddha Sthanam and they talk of moksha. And on the Siddha Shira, this one goes, this like this itself goes into the realm where all the Siddhas are there. That can be provided Atma is Nitya. Only when it is immortal, then only that is possible that they will have immortality. But if it is Madhyama Parimana, then how can it be Nitya? It will be Anitya. Paralaukika sadhana pravati asambhava prasanga, therefore there cannot be pravritti or activity for paralaukika sadhana as a means of attaining paraloka, in this case moksha. For swarga, etc., that cannot be. It is meaning that this is just to draw your attention that all these other problems also will come. You accept the Madhyama Parimana Atma. But what about your Kalpana? Where is Kalpaka? Says Uktopadim Antarena Atmana Swata Parichedat Anulambhat Yuktam Tasya Brahmatvam. Uktopadim Antarena. Other than the Brahma or the delusion caused by Upadhi, which creates a notion of limitedness in Atma. Other than that, there cannot be limitedness in Atma in consciousness. The limitedness of the consciousness that is felt is only due to the Upadhi. Other than that, how can there be a sense of limitedness in Atma? Uktopadi mantarena Atma Swatah Paricheda Anulamba Anupalambhat. By itself, Atma cannot be parichinna or limited except with the idea of the Upadhi. Yuktam Tasya Brahma. Therefore, Atma is Brahman, and that the limitedness is notion brought about Upadhi, as we just explained. How Atma is felt to be limited because of illumining buddhi that is limited, which is limited because of sense organ, because of the body. Other than that, the limitedness, notion of limitedness in Atma cannot arise. And therefore, without that limited notion, Atma is Brahma. Niravayavasya cha paramarthatah Upadhi samsarga ayogat. And it is not that Atma has become limited because of Upadhi. Upadhi samsarga ayogat. Atma is limitless, all-pervasive, niravayava, partless, formless. Upadhis with parts and forms are limited. So just as the space cannot have any contact with a part, that it can be limited by a part, consciousness cannot have any association with the upadhi to suffer from limitation upadhi. Therefore, this limitedness has to be kalpita. In Atma, which is limitless, which cannot have any association with the limited upadhi, therefore, limitedness of the Atma is merely a notion, cannot be a reality of Atma. So it has to be kalpitam. Kalpaka is not important, its kalpitam is important. The limitedness of the Atma has to be kalpita or imagined because it is limitless by nature and cannot have any association with anything that is limited because it transcends everything. So Digambara Mata Nirakarana, understand that Jain Dharma basically started as Digambara. Then the Shvetambara came and then the Deravasi etc. came. Slowly and slowly as people needed things, Even Buddhism also, their dharma only of the renunciates. Nobody can follow what Jain Mata is teaching unless you're Digambara and have no connection, they totally renunciate. Ordinary people cannot follow that. So slowly then the whole teaching has to be brought down to the practical level. And there is no God also there, which also people can't accept. So then Tirthankaras are essentially worshipped as God. Same thing about Buddha also. They all came as a protest as a revolt to Hinduism or the Vedic Dharma, which accepted Devatas, and then came the question of worship, then came the question of Yajna Yagadi, then came the question of sacrificing animals. So everything was dismissed. Along with bath or baby also was dismissed, So that is how ultimately people bring it back in their life, because how can you live a religious life, without having something to worship? Anyway, but so Digambara Mata Nirata. So basically Digambara Mata. Nirakarana. Yet Anantatvam Atmanoktam. So by refuting the conclusion of the Digambara, again the Vedanta asserted that Anantatvam Atma is Ananta, is limitless, infinite. That Amrishyamanaha Shakyaha cannot tolerate this idea of Atma being infinite, Nitya or eternal, and abiding reality. Amrishyama Shakyas, or that means the Buddhas, they cannot, so he is called Shakyamuni also. Bhagavan Buddha was called Shakyamuni and his followers are Shakyaha. They cannot tolerate the idea of something that is eternal or permanent. Buddha's teaching was very clear, there is no permanent, nothing permanent. Now, how to interpret that is a different matter, but ultimately there is nothing permanent, there is no permanent abiding reality such as consciousness. So when you say Anantatvam, infinite, limitless, abiding, devoid of the limitation of time and place and condition, they cannot accept an Atma such as that. Amrushyamaraha, those who cannot tolerate this idea of Atma being infinite, eternal, Pratyavatishthante, they right away present their opinion and they counter you. So next verse is the Purva Paksha. And then comes the Uttara. Kshanikam itadatyartham dharmamatram nirantaram sadrushya deepavattadhihi tachantif purusharthata. So the view of the Kshanika Vijnanins is presented here. Tat Kshanikam hi. Tika tat jnanam jnayam cha ubhayam kshanikam hi nishchitam. Tat means what? Jnanam cha jnanam jnayam cha. The knowledge and the known. In fact, the object and subject, both of these are only kshanikam. So not only the objects of perception are momentary, but the perceiver also is momentary. Everything is momentary. He nishchitam, and they have very elaborate arguments to show how there cannot be permanence at all. What is constantly changing. You see the change everywhere, and the perceiver also is constantly changing, and therefore change alone is a reality. Change shows that it never remains the same even the next moment, otherwise change cannot be. Everything is momentary. So this was the view adopted by Buddha in order to create vairagya and take out the mind from this samsara, and ultimately you have to accept an eternal entity, otherwise there cannot be nirvana anyway. But the way the view is presented is sarvam kshanikam kshanikam. The whole thing started with sarvam dukkham dukkham. Buddhism started with a deliberation upon the nature of dukkha or sorrow and the cause of sorrow. And all this, the business of taking these things permanent itself causes sorrow. Understand, nothing is permanent. What's the reason for you? There's no reason for you to grieve. If there is something permanent, ongoing, then only it can cause you grief. It constantly changing cannot cause you grief. Recognize that. So there is no cause for grief. Become free. So that jnanam jnayam cha ubhayam kshanikam iti nishchitam. Nishchitam, already asserted in that both the knowledge and the knower, or the knowing and object of knowledge, both of them are kshanika. But for a few moments at least to survive. Not just, it is moment, it is partless moment, understand? What is the duration of moment? There is no duration. Like point has no dimension, so also moment has no duration, partless moment. Moment you accept even slightest duration, it becomes permanent. Then you are accepting some kind of reality, So kshanikam means that it is partless. Katipaya aneka kshana vartitva shankam varayati. Someone may say that, hey, it has to last for a few moments. The moment has to have some dimension. Katipaya. Some certain number of kshana moments can be there. Why not? Then you can explain your life that I can see things, there's a seeing is there, seer is there. Even though it is changing still, it survives for a few moments. Then the Atma of this moment can remember what was perceived the previous moment, then he can have samskaras, then the Vyavahara can continue. Vyavahara cannot continue without memory. I cannot relate to you only, and that's this, I have to have this memory and recognition. Let us put it in memory, recognition. So recognize who you are, what I am confronting, then only I can interact, or I cannot. So Vyavahara presupposes recognition. Recognition presupposes memory, because what is recognition? Combination of pratyaksha and smriti. That I see this thing, that is a perception, and then I remember this is part, then there is recognition, there is a part. So Vyavahara is possible when there is recognition, not just perception. Simple perception is perceiving colors and forms. But I can interact only when I recognize what is that form, which is what this perception triggers the samskara, and that's how the memory comes. Oh yes, olkha. Olkha. Anybody, So you would know everybody. The olkha is important, that you recognize. Oh, I recognize you. So that is why katipaya aneka kshana vartitvam, you accept that the object and the subject last for some time to create samskara, then to continuation of the samskara. Then the vyavahara is possible, recognition is possible. He says no. Atyartham kshanikam. Extremely, absolutely momentary. Meaning Swarasa Bhanguram, which said Swarasa means Svabhavata Bhanguram. Its nature it is that it is Bhanguram. It is, it's constantly getting destroyed. It is impermanent. There is no permanence of any kind at all. That's the reality. Then what is it? Dharma matram, vastu matram. They use the word dharma for vastu. What? Because substance. So dharma, all it is dharma. Vastu matram, nasthai kinchit tasya adhishthanam asti iti matrasya artha. Merely an entity which has no steady basis at all. Nasthai kinchit tasya adhishthanam asti. Here you accept that this part has an adhishthanam in clay, which is adhishthanam in molecules and atoms, and ultimately you accept a permanent adhishthanam or permanent locus or basis of this. But no, there is nothing permanent at all. This is what the part is, what part is, nothing more than that, and it has no permanence in there, no abiding steadiness or permanence. Tari katham vichchedo na upalabhyate. If this is being created every moment, dying every moment, there is no continuity, there is constantly break or interruption, in what you call the existence, how come we don't see it? How come to us things look like they are continuous? If they are not continuous, how come we don't see that discontinuity? Kasam tarhi vichchedha na upalabhyate. Tatra, to that they reply, nirantaram. It is nirantaram, nairantaryena utpadyamana vityartha. Because an entity such as a part is created constantly, nirantaram utpadyamanam. Every moment it is created. Every moment the old part goes, a new part is created. So it's called nirantaram, meaning what? Nairantaryena, without any break. Now that is a difficult thing to imagine, but then if every moment is independent, then how can there be a connection between two independent entities and still they accept Nairant, meaning that it is Nirantarta is except somewhere, it's constantly being created. There is some constancy is there anyway, whatever it is, but it is constantly, Nairantari, constantly being created. Even the films are also on the screen. They are moved at such a speed that the eyes cannot recognize the break, and therefore we think the film is continuous. So this we learn when we are in school. That up to 15 frames a second you can recognize, and if the speed of the film is more than that, you can't recognize the break. So similarly also you cannot recognize the break even though it is there, you don't recognize it. Because so fast every moment is creating that you can't see the break. It is sarvam kshanikam. If as you say everything is momentary and every moment arising and then subsiding, katham tari tadeva idamiti. So how can there be this pratyabhijna recognition? Tadeva idam. The same pot that was there yesterday, or same I is here who was sitting yesterday in this place. Tadeva idam soham. Same person I am, otherwise no, there is no vyavhara. So same person is there. I see you after 1 month, still I see the same person. And I am also one who is seeing, but I also am the same one who had seen you a month ago. So, if everything is kshanika or momentary, how can there be recognition that you are the same person, I am the same person? Iti ched drashya drashtu vishayam pratyabhijnanam. So pratyabhijnanam, recognition is for both. The drashya also I recognize, that's the one that I had seen or met earlier, and drashta also, I who met that person is the same I that I am. So both ways there is a continuity. Also, I don't remember having seen you because I am not same, or you are not the same. How can this pratyabhijnanam about the subject and object both possible? Adi sadrushyat. It is only because of sadrushyam. Says sadrushyat, second line says sadrushyat divatadhihi. Sadrushyat. Tadhihi. Tadhihi. What is it? Tadeva idamiti matihi. That mati, that conclusion on your part, there is the same entity that I am perceiving, and the same and then perceiver is also the same, that dhihi. That is mati, that conclusion is there in the buddhi because of sadrushyat. Adi sadrushyat. The sadrusham similarity. Next moment is similar to previous moment, which is similar. So every moment the entity is similar, not the same. So you think that is the same entity, the same, or you think same entity if the next one also is similar. So similarity also creates the same notion that is the same entity. For you to conclude that I am seeing the same person, the person doesn't have to be the same. Just extremely similar, meaning that you cannot distinguish from this one new one to the previous one. So ati sadrushyat. Ati sadhyam, extreme similarity, such that you cannot distinguish the two. So exactly identical part is brought, you would not think that it is a different part. Because the part brought to you today is very similar to the part that was yesterday and there, but you think the same. So conclusion that an entity is the same can be either it is because it is same or because it is extremely similar, ati sadrushyat. Therefore also, so the sameness is a notion in you, in your mind, because of the extreme similarity. Sadrushyat. Tadhihi, meaning what? Tadeva idamiti matihi. How deep was sadhan? Example is deep, but like a flame. So flame looks continuous. There is no continuity. The flame is changing every moment. But each new flame is similar to the previous flame, and therefore you do not see the break. The discontinuity you do not see because of the extreme similarity of what is in this moment as compared to what it was the previous moment. It's all imagination anyway. If it is so, how do you determine this? How do you determine momentariness? Other than only in the buddhi, there is no way of determining momentariness. So this is merely a little argument because it can't be experienced. Momentariness cannot be experienced, shunya cannot be experienced, nothing can be experienced. They are simply projections. Except you must create a theory to dismiss the existing theory, that's all. Because the conclusion is this theory has made people miserable. Accepting things permanent is what makes you miserable. There is nothing permanent. There is no paraloka, there is no. So, The conclusion was the Vedic people are miserable because of believing in devatas, because they were hoping devatas to grace them, and therefore you do things to propitiate them. There is a continuing that you are, where is devata? What has it done to you? You fellows are all worshipping devatas, what has it done to you? That is how we completely turned them off. And so everybody was turned off from all devatas, all worship, everything. All you need is a very powerful person, to impress them, and that's how people take them. At any time, you need a charismatic person. And people will follow. I'm not simply reducing Gautam Buddha person, there was nothing less than, but what I'm saying is that this is how his teaching was so impactful because of his personality. And so, this is what, I guess, how did he think of this? I do not know. That is how the enlightenment must have come. But to me, it may look like another way of thinking to disconnect these people from what he thought was making them miserable. But anyway, so ultimately this is Deepavat. That lamp also is not a continuous flame, it is also a series of flames and that even the Charvakas also said, and the quantum mechanics also says, the idea of continuity is dismissed by quantum mechanics also as a quantum. That next moment there is no continuity in time. And so, that means there is no continuity anywhere. There may be no continuity in time as far as the matter is concerned. There is no continuous entity at all, not to dismiss because matter is quantum. That doesn't mean that there is no continuity anywhere. Anyway, tat shanti purusharthata. Therefore, give up all this thought of continuity. There is no continuity. Tat shanti tasya sthayitva pratibhasasya jnana gneta tanmulasya avivekasya shanti astamaya. Therefore, sthayitva pratibhasasya, the sthayitva pratibhasa, or this appearance of constancy, jnana gatasya, that in jnana there is constancy, in jnanam there is constancy, and in knower also is constancy. This constancy is what? If that constancy is not there, then nothing will affect you. This person said something to me yesterday. There is no person here. Moment you give the idea of constancy, then no samskaras remain, and then there is no question of dukkha. Dukkha is caused from samskara. Or what somebody did to me, or what, etc. No samskaras. There is no entity there, no more here. And therefore, moment you give the idea of this continuity, idea of permanence, idea of sustaining, idea of recognition, who says the same person? It's not the same person. You did this. There is nobody here. Nobody did anything to you. You are not there. He is not there. Nothing. Forget it. In that case, the grief that comes to me on account of, so says grief is because of permanence. Jagat is permanent. The knower is permanent. And therefore it all piles up. This is how the build-up is there, and that's what causes grief. No permanence. Therefore, sthayitva pratibhasasya, that sthayitva is the pratibhas, appearance of continuity, or appearance of something abiding. Jnana gnaya gatasya, the jnanam also is sthayi, gnaya also is sthayi. Tanmulas avivek, that this is all aviveka, is a brahma and not a reality. Shanti astamaya. This whole idea of I being an abiding entity, the Jagat being an abiding entity, there is no abiding thing at all, it's all changing, nothing permanent. Therefore, whatever conclusions and therefore the pain that comes to you on account of accepting things as permanent, give that up. Moment idea of permanence is given up, dukkha will go. So, pratibhasa nivritteva purushatata moksha ityartha. So, pratibhasa nivritti, that this continuous pratibhasa, not a reality. And that is because of your aviveka. Because of not understanding the reality about things, this is what your conclusion is, your Brahma is. So this is Brahma, that the permanence is Brahma. And that permanence causes all the grief. Give up the idea of permanence. That is not permanent. You are not permanent. Nothing is permanent. So that is the Purushasata. That's the goal of freedom from grief that you achieve by giving up your conclusion or notions. So this is the Buddhist view. And Siddhanti will have to refute that we'll see in next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.